Hey guys, so I was recently thinking about this phenomenon the other day of horror movie rewatchability and how the movies that are the most rewatchable are typically not the most well done or best horror movies. I thought we would explore this today and have a little discussion in addition to a list of movies that I find not rewatchable, which may surprise you, some of them anyway, and see if I'm the only one who feels this way, even though I have a feeling based on what I see online, at least in my community, my horror community that I've built here, that I'm not the only one that thinks this. I think a lot of us have comfort movies and movies that we gravitate towards that aren't really that good. So this video will be kind of a discussion and a list all in one, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this and what movies you find really amazing films that just aren't rewatchable to you, or some of your favorite rewatchable movies that are not good. But before we get into it, I just want to thank Shudder for sponsoring today's video. Shudder, of course, is a premium streaming service for all things horror, thriller, and suspense. Their collection includes blockbuster hits, horror classics, and original and exclusive content such as titles like Color Out of Space, Host, the Mortuary Collections, plus all the best horror documentaries and the hit Creepshow TV series. They recently added the Ginger Snap sequels to their collection, which I highly recommend. They're a little bit more fun viewing than the original. Also, just last night I watched The Amusement Park, which is a unreleased or previously unreleased George A. Romero movie, and let me just say, I'm gonna be sad for quite a long time now, but it is such a powerful movie and I highly, highly recommend checking it out. It's just an hour long and it is fantastic. It's more of a psychological thriller, but please watch it. You can stream Shudder completely ad-free from all of your devices, including iOS and Android, Xbox One, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and Google Chromecast, all for $5.99 a month or $56.99 per year. Or of course, you can try Shudder for free for 30 days if you go to shudder.com and use my code POSSESSED30. So what makes you want to rewatch a horror movie? What makes you want to relive that experience and see it through again and again, even though you've already seen it and you know what to expect? I find that the really well done, emotional, heavy, intense horror movies are typically not the ones that I like to relive. And then I will watch movies such as The Gallows or The Bye-Bye Man, which I think are great examples of horror movies that are technically bad that have great rewatchability. I'll watch movies like that, recognize that they're bad, never want to see it again, and then for some reason 6 months later I feel like watching it again. And I think this phenomenon is a little bit deeper than just surface level, at least for me. I'm not going to speak for every horror fan here, but I kind of came up with some reasons as to why I think it is, at least for me. So I'm a very sensitive person. I don't know if you know that yet based on my content, and yes, you absolutely can be very sensitive, highly sensitive, empathetic of a person and still love horror movies. I'm a great example of this. However, I do not want to relive heavy emotional trauma time and time again. Even Interstellar, which you could see my little vinyl here of the soundtrack, my favorite movie of all time, I can only rewatch about twice a year because I just go through something every single time I watch it, no matter how many times I watch it. So that's part of it. I just think the heavy stuff isn't really that enjoyable more than once, with some exceptions, including Midsummer. For some reason, that movie is very rewatchable, but kind of traumatic emotionally. On the other hand, Hereditary is a great example of a movie that is almost perfect. Such a well-done movie, and I have never rewatched it one time. I've only seen it one time because it's just too much. It's too much trauma, it's too many emotions, and it's in a way that I just don't want to relive it. Another reason is that I think is just a plain fact when it comes to horror movies, and I think most horror fans would agree with me, is that a movie does not have to be good to be entertaining. There is a reason why we gravitate as horror fans to cheesy 80s horror movies. I did a whole video on movies so bad that they're good up here. You can check that out. I think that's another phenomenon within the horror genre in and of itself. I don't really see this in other genres often. Granted, I'm not really dabbling in a lot of other genres, to be honest. Not really a rom-com kind of person, so I don't know if people do. I mean, I'm sure that they like bad rom-coms. But I think specifically in the horror genre, it's just really interesting to see the movies that we love and keep going back to, and the ones that become cult classics, even though they're very bad, technically, there's a reason why 80s horror is so loved when by today's standards, it's kind of bad. And there's a reason why early 2000s cheesy horror movies is such favorite era for so many people, not just myself. There's just so many other factors that make these movies entertaining and enjoyable than whether the camera work is beautiful or the soundtrack is impactful. Movies like The Room, not horror, but why do you think they get so famous? These movies just don't get popular because they're super artistic, original, and well acted. That's not why they get popular. But it's not out of, hey, this movie's so bad, I want to rewatch it. It's entertaining. Like, we genuinely like these movies, and we like the fact that they're so bad. We turn to these over and over again instead of, looking or seeking out really amazing, super artistic, original horror movies every single time. Instead of every time we're in the mood for a movie, sometimes, for me, it's like 50% of the time, I'll rewatch something instead of finding something new, which could broaden my horizons. I would have so much more content to share with you if I watched a new movie every single time I wanted to watch a movie. But for some reason, I gravitate more towards the ones I've already seen and aren't even that good. Like, what am I getting out of it that makes me want to watch it over and over again? I mean, don't get me wrong. I love a good new discovery of like a really amazing horror movie like Saint Maud. Seeing that earlier this year, I was like, wow, that's amazing, incredible. I'm so happy I chose to watch it that day. Sometimes, though, it can go a little bit too far in the other direction where it's not entertaining. It loses the entertainment factor because it's so well done, which I just realized, that sounds horrible. Like, how do I defend that? It's so good, it's just not good. Like, how do I explain that? The Lighthouse is a great example, and I know a lot of you love it and probably have rewatched it. That's fair. In my opinion, that is a perfect example of a movie that went too far in the other direction of creative, original, artistic, well acted, where it loses the entertainment factor for me. And a lot of you would argue that The Babadook also falls in this category, which breaks my heart to put it there, but I realized that is a movie I've only seen the one time, even though I own it. I mean, you can't argue that The Lighthouse and The Babadook are decent movies. Like, they're very well done. They're well acted within reason. I know people have issues with The Babadook, and I'm sure people have issues with the way that The Lighthouse was made. And I do too, but mostly for the sake of entertainment, not that it was like in poor quality or anything like that. So you can't argue that they're good movies. Like, they're well done, they're artistic, they're original, well acted, all the factors that should make a good horror movie, yet people find them not rewatchable and they never want to see it again. So let's get back to why bad movies are in fact rewatchable. I have a couple theories and different factors as to what makes them rewatchable. Firstly, nostalgia. Good old nostalgia, which is probably the number one reason why I gravitate towards early 2000s movies. It is the era I was a teenager in. It's the era I remember most vividly from my childhood. It's when I first started in horror, like got into horror, was in my teens. So naturally, I'm going to gravitate towards the bad horror movies I watched, which were the first horror movies I ever watched. Why do you think I collect DVDs and not Blu-rays or VHS tapes? Because DVDs were my era of my teenage years when they were invented. So for me, it's a sense of nostalgia, and I think that's why a lot of people go back to the era in which they first discovered horror and why that era specifically is their favorite. So this theory is gonna get a little bit philosophical for a second, so just go with it. I think rewatching somewhat bad movies that don't affect us too emotionally gives us a sense of control. Sense of control over terrifying situations, and kind of brings us peace of mind in a weird way. I think that's why a lot of people do gravitate towards horror movies in general. It's a way to expose ourselves to horrific things without it being real for us, and it brings us a sense of control and eases our anxiety for some reason. There's actually been studies that have shown that those who watch horror movies are typically better equipped for real life horrifying situations like the pandemic, which I think is also fascinating. Why is it that we are drawn to these situations so much so, And it also prepares us for real world situations, even though they're not really realistic. I actually answered this question in a podcast that I'm in on the Who's There podcast. I will link the podcast information down below. My episode will be airing on June 20th, I believe, on Midsummer. So go check out that podcast when it comes out. But I kind of talk more about this in that podcast. Okay, another reason why I think we gravitate towards rewatching bad movies is anxiety, which I suffer from. I don't know if you do. It's kind of, common thing for a lot of people. This, I think, ties into the sense of control, the wanting to re-experience things that we already know what's going to happen. And this all happens, I think, on a subconscious level. But anxiety can actually make us gravitate more towards rewatching the same movies over and over again. This is why comfort movies exist. And that doesn't have to be horror. We all have our own comfort movies, some in the horror genre, I'm sure, because you watch my channel, and some probably not. Like for me, Downsizing is my ultimate comfort movie. If I don't know what to watch and I need comforting, I'm gonna rewatch Downsizing. I've seen it 100 times, but I love that movie. So my anxiety just makes me want to rewatch something where I already know what's gonna happen. There's nothing unexpected about the situation. So I think that kind of goes hand in hand with just wanting a little bit of a sense of control. Maybe I'm reading way too into the, philosophical theories as to why we rewatch bad movies. I really don't know. I don't know truly what makes bad movies rewatchable, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this and your opinions on this, because I find it fascinating and I would love to know what you think about it. Why do you think bad horror movies are rewatchable and why good ones aren't? I mean, I'm gonna say it. Good ones are not rewatchable. Why? So now I want to talk about some movies that I just find completely not rewatchable, ones that I have no interest in rewatching for one reason or another. First one, I already talked about, Hereditary. I don't find this rewatchable. I don't know if I'll ever bring myself to rewatch it again. I want to, but then I'll sit down and really try to go into it and I can't do it, because it's like, why do I want to relive this? Why do I want to go through those emotions again? That trauma that I felt after watching it in theaters? Why? Why do I want to do that? So I don't. Mother, again, only saw it the one time in theaters. Traumatic experience. I, for some reason, want to try to push myself through it again, but not for the same reasons I want to rewatch other movies. I don't know why. I don't know why also I can't bring myself to do it. It's just so much. Too much, probably. I'm, like I said, sensitive, anxiety. That movie is just the worst one I've ever seen that triggered my anxiety, so it's a no thank you. I don't know if I'll ever rewatch it. Regrettably, I thought of The Witch, because if you had asked me, would you rewatch it? I would say absolutely. It's a great movie. It's super well done. I love that movie. Own it on DVD. I've seen it one time. So clearly not rewatchable. I never gravitate towards it. I own it. I see it every day in my DVD collection. Every day I want to watch a movie, I look at my DVD collection. I never pick it. Not one time have I watched it on the DVD that I own. I bought it because I thought it was really good, but clearly it's too good for me to rewatch. I feel like my theory behind movies like The Witch is that it's such a good movie. It requires the right setting, if I'm gonna be alone or not. It just requires more effort than if I put on like Hills of Eyes, which is, disturbing in its own sense, but it's a cheesier early 2000s movie, so it's easy to just pop on. I could go on my phone during it if I want to. The Witch requires full attention. Maybe that's what makes good movies not rewatchable. It's more effort, because you want to pay respect to the movie because it's so well done, and you just don't have the time or the patience for that specific movie at the time. Climax, the same reason I won't rewatch Mother or Hereditary. It's just too much of an emotional investment for me and past the point of entertaining. So it's not like I'm enjoying my experience. It's just traumatic at that point. So Climax, will never be rewatching that. The Snowtown Murders, I think that goes without saying. I saw it the one time. That's all I need. It's very disturbing, based on real life stories, and anything that is based in reality is actually way harder for me to watch. True crime is actually really difficult for me to watch in general. I don't know if you know that. I recently watched the documentary I Love You Now Die on HBO, and it took me multiple settings because it's just so negative and heartbreaking and tragic that I couldn't handle it all in one sitting. I'm not really a true crime person. I know. I used to be. But I think I just get older and I gain more perspective, and it's just not what entertains me anymore. I watch it sometimes when I'm interested, but I have to be in the right headspace, and it's just not entertainment to me. So it's really difficult for me to consume true crime media. Martyrs. Martyrs is amazing. I would recommend everyone see that at least once in their life. The original French version, not the American remake. The American remake I could probably rewatch a million times. It's not disturbing. It's not even good. But the original is phenomenal. It's a beautiful piece of art. Will never rewatch it because I got what I needed out of it. I, learned from it. I took what I got from it. It was an experience. I don't need to relive it. Megan is missing. Obvious reasons. Again, that movie is just horrible. Horrible. For one, it's a bad movie, technically, and not in the sense that you want to rewatch it. It's just disturbing. And I'm going to say any exploitation movie that I've ever seen, Serbian film, Human Centipede 2, anything like that I've already seen, obviously not going to rewatch for obvious reasons. You already know this. Anything with gratuitous stuff going on, not for me. Not for me. So I will link the video of the most disturbing movies I've ever seen, and also movies that I will never watch that are exploitation, what I consider exploitation. I know there's lots of different types of exploitation movies, but when I say that, I mean like the gratuitous violence, if you know what I mean, and things like that. So just shock value, things that put things in the movie just for shock, not for me. So yeah, check out those videos if you want to know more. I'll take a good PG-13 2000s horror movie over Human Centipede 2 or Serbian film any day. So those are kind of just my theories. I just thought it was an interesting topic that I wanted to bring to discussion on my channel, because I think a lot of you would have really good insight into this and a lot to add to it. It's just really fun to think about. And I would love to hear all of your opinions on this. What are movies that you find rewatchable and not, and why? Why are they rewatchable or not? Leave all your thoughts down below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.